Well, welcome to this week's Israel Answer series on why Christians are celebrating Israel's 75th anniversary. Yep, Israel is 75 years old in May 2023, and we're celebrating it. So stay with me today to hear some of the reasons why. If you didn't hear last week's podcast, I really suggest you listen to it because we laid the foundation for why Christians should support Israel and why they would want to celebrate her 75th anniversary. Today, I just want to add to that a couple more reasons. So first, you need to know a little bit of history. The Middle East was at one time Christian. Yep, the Roman Empire became Christian in the 4th century, and for the next 300 years, there were churches peppered throughout the Middle East, and Christians were free to worship and free to grow their churches. But then Islam moved in from the Arabian Peninsula and took over the whole Middle East, and in fact, over the next 200 years, spread all the way to India in the east, to Spain in the west. So Islam took a lot of territory. The Middle East now was Islamic, and those that retained their Christian faith were the ones that came from families that were wealthy enough to pay a very high tax called a jizya, and they were able to then retain their Christian faith. Now fast forward, centuries later, the families in the Middle East that are still Christian today are the descendants of those early ones. And for centuries, they have really suffered, sometimes outright persecution, often discrimination. Their churches are not free to grow. Their churches are not free to even build new buildings. And the Christian faith has really been very suppressed. And those that are still Christian in the Middle East today are ones that their families have paid a very, very high price. And I don't just mean money. I mean reputation. I mean freedom. They have suffered greatly, but they chose not to convert to Islam and to retain the Christian faith. Now, the predominant denomination in the Middle East is Eastern Orthodoxy, and then we have Catholicism. A minority are Protestants, and a minority of the minority are evangelicals. So because of this, evangelicals in America struggle sometimes to relate to Middle East Christians because they are largely Eastern Orthodox. And I just want to say that we need to realize that these families have kept the name of Christ. They have kept the Christian faith, their understanding of it, in the face of martyrdom sometimes, in the face of persecution, discrimination, living as a second-class citizen often. And so I think that we need to appreciate that and honor that. Now, back to why Christians should support Israel. In the Middle East today, Christianity is becoming extinct in many of those ancient areas. 1,000 years ago, there were still more Christians in the Middle East than were in Europe. 100 years ago, 20% of the Middle East was Christian. Today, it's less than 5%, and because of the war in Iraq and with ISIS in Syria, the civil war, I think it's probably down to about 2%. So Christianity is becoming extinct in the very place where it began, except the exception is Israel. There, the Christian community is growing. They are educated, they are prosperous, they have freedom of worship, they're able to build a church, they are free. And therefore, in recent years, there has been a large number of Christian Arab youth who are joining the Israel Defense Forces. They want to serve in the army because they appreciate the freedoms that they have. They see what's going on in the countries around them, and they want to retain their freedom. And so they are actually fighting to defend their families and defend their nation of Israel. So we as Christians here in the West, we really need to show our appreciation to Israel for protecting the Christians there and for giving them a good life. What a great reason to celebrate Israel's 75th anniversary, because for 75 years, those Arab Christians living inside Israel have been protected and free. Now, another reason why Christians would want to celebrate Israel and to support Israel has to do with another facet of history. Yes, I always have to go back and give you the history, because only then do you really understand what's happening today. So the history I'm referring to now is the history of Jewish-Christian relations. Sadly, it's a history of Christian anti-Semitism. There has been really terrible relations between Jews and Christians for some 1,700 years. Much of Christian history was under the plight, the sin of Christian anti-Semitism. The historic churches actually taught contempt of the Jewish people, that they had been rejected by God and they had been replaced by the church as the people of God, and they were deserving of being persecuted or discriminated against, or any suffering or the wandering. They deserved it. Thankfully, in the last 100 years especially, we've seen a sea change in the Christian faith and its approach to and its view of the Jewish people. I, for one, am so grateful to have been born into this generation, and a large part of it is because of the existence of the State of Israel. Now, I need to say that the real foundation for this shift in Christianity goes back 500 years to when the Bible was translated into the everyday languages and then was mass-produced through this brand new thing called the printing press. And as everyday Christians got a hold of their Bibles and were able to read it in their own language, they discovered that Jesus was Jewish. Yeah. A lot of them didn't know. They only knew the Jesus that they saw in the pictures in the church. And there he had white skin and blonde hair and blue eyes. He looked European. They didn't know. Now they're seeing he's Jewish. He's from the Middle East. And Christianity is Jewish. And the Apostle Paul said we should honor the Jewish roots of our faith and realize that it supports us. So there was a sea change that has been birthed over these several hundred years as Bible-based Christianity has grown. Today, it's the fastest growing segment of Christianity and will soon, one day, I don't know the date, but will one day become the largest segment of Christianity. And this Bible-based segment, while not 100% good on Israel, mostly is, and therefore I don't think we'll ever have Christian anti-Semitism again the way we did in history. However, we do have, it still does exist, and we're seeing and we're hearing of it more and more these days as anti-Semitism in general is also increasing. So what does this have to do with our support of Israel? Because as Christians, we should be very sensitive to this history, and we should be very sensitive to the danger of anti-Semitism and the ugly face of anti-Semitism. We should have a commitment to stand with the Jewish people against any and all forms of anti-Semitism today. And the predominant form of anti-Semitism today is anti-Israelism, or what we call anti-Zionism. The classic anti-Semitism was against the individual Jew. Today it's against the collective Jew, the Jewish state of Israel. And there are forces in this world that want to see the state of Israel dismantled, brought to an end. They hate Israel, and they are throwing propaganda at her. They are throwing lies at her. They're doing everything they can to turn the international community against her and call for her to be dismantled. So as Christians, we need to be very sensitive to this and be motivated to start a new relationship with the Jewish people in our day, a relationship that's built on mutual respect, and that we should be willing to stand against the dangers that they face in rising anti-Semitism today as a way of, you could say, making amends for our past. It won't begin to make amends, but it's a way of beginning that, of extending a hand of friendship and saying, we've learned from the past. We will never let that happen again, and we will stand with you against all forms of hatred and bigotry that is blasted at you every day. We stand in solidarity with you. We pray for you. We bless you. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And we do this as Christians. So these are two great reasons why Christians should want to celebrate with Israel and for Israel and over 75 years of Israel. Now, how can you celebrate? Well, I've got two invitations for you. First, we at the ICEJ have organized two gala dinners in celebration of Israel's 75th. The first one will be May the 7th in Nashville, Tennessee. The second one will be on May 17th in Washington, D.C. The two programs will be quite different, but equally excellent and exciting. So I invite you to both. But if you need to choose one. We're going to put a link in today's show notes how you can go on our website and purchase tickets to those events. Better yet, I encourage you, buy a table or buy a sponsorship that comes with a number of tickets. Bring your family, bring your friends, put your name on the program as one of our sponsors. Our goal is that these events will be collaborative, that we will say we have a list of 25, 30 different sponsors of tonight's event, which really shows the broad base of support for Israel in our community. This is a community-wide celebration. And so we invite you to be with us, be a sponsor if possible, and celebrate with us. My second invitation, if you cannot be at either one of those events, you can sign a happy birthday card to Israel. Let her know you're celebrating from your home. We're going to put a link to that also in today's show notes. Sign the card. We're going to send it to Israel's Prime Minister and to the cabinet members there in Israel. We'll send it to the Israeli Embassy in Washington, D.C. Let them know that you are sending your happy birthday to Israel. Thirdly, if all of the above, I want to add, I invite you to get involved in the ministry of the ICEJ. We are there every day blessing Israel, representing Christian support and love to the people of Israel. So go to our website. We're going to link to that also in today's show notes. Sign up, get on our email list, become a donor, support our projects. Let us represent you to the people of Israel as someone who's praying for them and blessing them. We're your hands and feet there on the ground in Israel. So sign up today. Well, that is it, why Christians should be celebrating Israel's 75th anniversary and how you can be a part of it. So I want to wish you Godspeed. God bless.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Out of Zion with Susan Michael. Be sure to subscribe to Out of Zion now on Apple Podcasts, cpnshows.com, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen and learn. Out of Zion with Susan Michael is a production of ICEJ USA, all rights reserved.